Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're taking a journey into something truly fascinating. Our goal today is to build a really wholesome understanding of how design quietly, almost invisibly, shapes a child's emotional growth. You know, we so often think of design as just the surface stuff, right? The buttons, the colors, the layout. But as you'll see, it goes so much deeper than that.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1, the emotional environment, 2, what emotions need, 3, the emotional skill loop, 4, tailoring emotional support, and finally, section 5, the designer as guide. Let's dive right in.
All right, part 1, the emotional environment. We really need to start by understanding that digital design isn't just some flat utility. It's an active, breathing, emotional space. So I want to pose this question directly to you right out of the gate. What actually is design to a child? When we adults hear the word design, we're usually thinking about aesthetics, usability, or maybe just entertainment value. But we really need to challenge those standard assumptions if we want to understand the kid's perspective. Notice the stark contrast here. We're moving from design as interface to design as environment. To a child, design is basically a constant system of cues. Think of it kind of like a traditional Beijing Hatong courtyard. The physical layout of that courtyard doesn't explicitly teach family rules to a child, right? Nobody's reading a manual. But the architecture naturally shapes how people move, where they gather, where they pause, and how they interact with each other. The space literally makes certain feelings easier to have. Digital design works exactly the same way. It tells a child what's safe, what's possible, and honestly, what gets ignored.
Moving on to part 2, what emotions need.
If design is an environment, what does an emotion actually need in that space? Well, think of a child's emotions like a young plant. They aren't a finished, broken object that needs to be fixed. They're actively growing, and they need very specific conditions to grow properly. First up, emotions need a safe container. The teacup metaphor is absolutely perfect for this. Imagine boiling hot tea. It's fluid, it's chaotic, and it's hot. Without a cup, it just spills everywhere, and it's completely impossible to hold safely. The cup doesn't create the tea, but it gives it shape. Good design provides this predictable, safe container, maybe through gentle screen transitions or really calm feedback, so a child's big feelings don't just overflow into panic or shame. It basically makes the feeling safe to feel. Next, emotions desperately need meaning. An emotion without meaning is just this massive, overwhelming wave washing over a kid. Think about a map legend. A map is just a bunch of random squiggly lines and colors until you have a legend that tells you what they actually represent. Emotional experience is exactly the same. Design helps connect a raw, physical feeling, like a racing heart, to a concrete reason. Like, oh, I'm nervous right now because this level is new. It helps the child answer what they are feeling and, more importantly, why. Now let's look at 2 more vital metaphors here, the kettle and the dimmer switch. The kettle represents the time needed to slowly process feelings. Water doesn't just instantly snap into steam, it changes state gradually. And yet, so much of modern design constantly rushes kids. But true emotional growth, that happens in the pause. Kids need time to cool down and recover. And the dimmer switch, that represents meaningful agency. It taps into that deep human need to feel like, hey, something I do actually matters. A dimmer switch lets you adjust the lighting in a room, right? Well, good design lets a child regulate the pace, the pathway, or the intensity of a digital experience.
So, putting that all together, the crucial takeaway boils down to 5 core needs. To be noticed, which means providing clear signals, to be held in a safe container, to be understood by giving their emotion actual meaning, to move, which absolutely requires time to recover, and finally, to grow, which requires agency. These 5 fundamental truths build the absolute foundation of emotional growth. All right, let's roll into part 3, the emotional skill loop. We're shifting from abstract needs into concrete skills now. Think about learning to balance on a bicycle. You know, no one learns to balance by sitting on the couch reading a textbook about gravity. They learn because the bike, the ground, and a supportive parent make it possible to try, wobble, and fail safely. So how does a raw feeling actually become a skill? It happens through the 7-step loop. Step 1 is the stimulus. Then step 2, the feeling itself. Step 3, noticing it. Step 4, naming it. Step 5, choosing an action. Step 6, responding. And finally, step 7, recovery. Children move through these repeated cycles constantly. And here is why this is absolutely crucial for us. Your design can intercept, support, or completely break this exact loop at any single moment.
If the design rushes the child, the loop snaps, and they get stuck merely reacting instead of learning. Let's look at a real-world illustration of this. Imagine a digital drawing activity where a child makes a mistake and gets frustrated. A poor design just fails without any explanation and forces a hard restart. That raw frustration stays raw, and it often turns straight into shame, or the kid just gives up entirely. But look at the better design over on the right. It saves their progress, offers a calm reset option, and frames mistakes as just part of the process. This is a game changer. It actually allows the child to practice emotional regulation. We aren't designing for the absence of frustration. We're giving them the space to practice staying with that frustration and pushing through it. Which brings us to part 4, tailoring emotional support.
We really need to ground this theory in reality, because not all emotions run at the same temperature, right? They require highly specific types of support. Look at the precision of this grid. Excitement needs to be channeled so it doesn't become overstimulation. Shame desperately needs safety and non-exposure. There's an incredible anecdote from the source material about a China-based homework app that kids use after school. If this app instantly marks answers wrong with flashing red screens and forces the kid to restart, the emotional message to that child is very clear. Mistake equals public exposure and shame. But if the app instead offers a calm explanation, a chance to retry, and a visible sense of progress, the message completely flips to mistake equals useful information. That massive fundamental shift preserves the child's willingness to stay engaged and keep learning.
And a massive part of tailoring that support involves the actual type of feedback we're giving. Notice the contrast here. True emotional support isn't about constant, empty praise. You know the type, just vaguely flashing good job on the screen. That's empty. It tells the child how they're supposed to feel without helping them understand why. Useful feedback, on the other hand, is specific. Saying something like, "You kept trying after that mistake," acts as a well-lit mirror. It provides reflection without humiliation, and it actually helps the child truly understand their own resilience. And finally, part 5, the designer as guide. Let's bring this explainer home by redefining what your true role actually is in all of this. Listen, as a designer, you do not force or manipulate feelings. You aren't there to magically install emotional regulation into a kid's brain. Instead, you act as the invisible guide. You give the child the clarity to notice what's happening, the safety to stay present without fear, the meaning to understand the feeling, the time to recover, and ultimately, the choice to respond. You are designing a path that guides movement, not by pushing them down it, but by making the direction clearer and much safer to walk. So I want to end this explainer on a lingering, somewhat provocative thought for you to take away. Does your design manipulate emotions, or does it guide them? I really challenge you to look at your own products through this new lens, because once you stop seeing just interfaces and start seeing an active emotional system, you can build environments that are calm, supportive, and deeply, deeply effective. Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep learning, keep guiding, and I'll see you next time.